The Eau Claire City Council will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Berge, Brewster,
Here.
Felton, Johnson,
Here.
Jones,
Here.
Imboga, Miller,
Here.
Stone,
Here.
Serrano,
Here.
Workman.
Here.
Thank you. So welcome to the Monday, March 10th meeting of the Eau Claire City Council. I'm filling in for President Berge tonight. She is with Councilmember Imboga at the National League of Cities Conference in Washington, D.C. So I'm appreciative that she is representing our city there and bringing back some good networking and advocacy with our elected officials there. So here's how tonight's meeting will work. Staff will present an item, then council can ask questions, and then the item will be opened up for public comment. We'll prioritize people who've put their name on our sign-up sheets and then open to the rest of the chamber. And each speaker can have 4 minutes and speak one time. And just as a note, in addition to speaking before council tonight, there are other ways to share your thoughts if you'd prefer not to speak. You can fill out the comment cards in the back of the room. They're blue. You can email council members. You can also fill out an electronic comment form, which is on the same website as the council packets online. These can be found at our homepage, eauclairewi.gov. So we'll go through each agenda item, and then at the end will be a public comment. So first on our agenda is a public hearing on the city's intention to order the repair and installation of citywide sidewalk and curb and gutter according to section 660907 Wisconsin statutes at 25 locations, beginning with 420 Gilbert Avenue. And that will be Ms. Ness presenting.
Good evening. So the citywide replacement, sidewalk replacement program has been going on for many years, and I wanted to provide just some examples of situations that get called into our office, and then we typically would send out an inspector or a technician to check out the area of concern for the sidewalk, and that is how the properties are added onto this list, the 25 locations that are before you today. So examples up here on the screen show spalling sidewalk, where the sidewalk is just kind of popping and you're losing concrete. There's cracking, which could potentially be a trip hazard, or even kind of some heaving in the sidewalks. You can see our technicians will typically spray paint those if there are a trip hazard, so we can keep that identified and for what area would be removed adjacent to the properties noted. So these are kind of some examples of what you may see in the field or ideas of what people are calling in to ask for replacement of sidewalks. We also do fill in sidewalk gaps as well with this project. I do not believe this year there are any sidewalk gaps, though, that we are filling. Most of them are trip hazards, cracking situations. And then this is the result. You can see new sidewalk, kind of sidewalk gap installations that we've done up in the upper left-hand corner. You can see a single panel replacement in the upper right-hand corner. It may be just the driveway approach sidewalk that is crossing, or just, one or two panels near a tree. With this project or this type of replacement, we do take into consideration if there is a tree that is causing the heave, or if there is something else that is resulting in the issue of the cracking. We do try to address that with the project as well. We did have a couple individuals call into engineering related to the notice that was sent to them. I don't know if they will be here to speak tonight or not. One had concerns with the cost estimate related to the sidewalk replacement or improvement, and the other similar situation. Just they may have reported it themselves, but they didn't understand that they would be assessed back for the replacement of the sidewalk. And with that, I think I can take any questions.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Acting Council President Anderson. I got a call from somebody that I think it might be on that list for the people that are getting their sidewalk replaced, and was interested in the assessment about that, because they said that it had been done and they had paid for it maybe like 5 years ago, and it just like hadn't held up, and so now it's having to be done again. And I'm just wondering, you know, if we're charging people to do this, is there like a time period, especially if we're outsourcing these tasks to somebody that isn't, you know, our streets department or whatever? Are we in some fashion holding them responsible for the quality of their work?
Yes, we do have written into our sidewalk repair contract and our streets contract a warranty timeframe related to concrete. And typically, when we assess properties, we have a lifespan associated with the concrete. I believe concrete sidewalk is 25 or 30 years. So if we do have to come back in and replace the concrete for some reason, we would prorate the assessment. So with the property owner that maybe we were in there 5 years ago, and there is concern with the sidewalk now, it's probably not something that would still be covered under that contract, but we could look at prorating the assessment.
Councilmember Miller?
Thank you, Council Vice President. Director Ness, just for clarification, you said there's not a sidewalk gap visible in these, and just for clarification on what that means, is that like when a whole piece of sidewalk is gone, is it gone, or by gap, do you mean you're filling in like non-contiguous sidewalks? Could you just clarify what a sidewalk gap is in that term?
Yep. When referring to sidewalk gap in this situation, I guess I would be thinking of historically, prior to me working at the city, I don't know when we exactly changed development methods, but now within newer developments, require a sidewalk to be installed throughout the entire development. Historically, that wasn't the case. So as a home was built, the sidewalk would be installed with that property. But maybe the homeowner had 2 lots or 3 lots, and they only installed the sidewalk on the lot adjacent to their home. So trying to fill in those situations where there is a sidewalk either on either side or connecting to an existing sidewalk.
Okay, thanks for the definition.
Councilmember Serrano?
Thank you, Council Vice President. I am wondering, do we do this once a year? I mean, is this a collection? I see there's 25 parcels. Is it like, this is it for 2025 kind of?
So how this is handled is we take all of the properties called in up until December 31st. And then should someone want to add sidewalk that is adjacent to their property to this contract, after December 31st this year, we ask them to sign a petition and waiver, and they could potentially be added on to this year's contract. But otherwise, from January 1 of this year moving forward, everything would be added on to next year's contract.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Ness.
Thanks.
And no one is here for public comment, it looks like, so we'll move on to our next public discussion item, which is essential programs protection. Public discussion on a resolution urging Congress to protect essential programs by rejecting dramatic cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and Social Security. This was brought forward by Councilmembers Worthman and Jones. Would one of you like to speak on this? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Council Vice President Anderson. A couple weeks ago, Congress passed a roadmap to a new budget, and within that, a call for $800 billion funding, requesting that the Energy and Commerce Committee within Congress look at ways to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and other programs in order to make up that budget. Now, I want to be very clear that nothing is set in stone yet, but it is without a doubt concerning to all of us that that roadmap was passed and asked the committee to look for cuts to be made to these very essential programs. A couple things that you will see within this resolution is the fact that 22% of the residents that we serve in the city of Eau Claire use some form of Medicaid funding, either short-term healthcare or long-term needs. In 2022, SNAP was used by roughly 10,000 residents within our community, and that's supporting families with children who need assistance with food costs. We're at a time when all of the prices that people are paying for healthcare, for food, and housing are all on the rise, and so we, Councilmember Jones and I brought this forward to draw attention not only to this issue within our community, but to have a conversation about the fact that if a budget were passed, our residents in Eau Claire would see an impact, and not only that, in many different ways, we would be asked to pick up those pieces in whatever way we can as a city. And so this resolution strongly urges Congress not to cut what we think and what we believe are vitally important services that are currently provided.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Councilmember Worthman or Councilmember Jones? Great, thanks. And are any members of the, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't see you there. Thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Vice President Anderson. My question, I know it's included in the resolution, but I know we've got folks in council chambers here tonight and perhaps folks who are listening. Could you speak to just the intent when council considers this resolution for action tomorrow afternoon, if it passes, where this would go and sort of the intent and how this message would be shared more broadly?
Absolutely. Council Vice President, if I could. This copy of this, which is spelled out in our resolution, if passed, would be shared with our Congressman of the 3rd Congressional District, Derek Van Orden, as well as members of Congress from across the state of Wisconsin, so all within the delegation. It also calls for sharing this resolution with our National League of Cities and our League of Wisconsin Municipalities for their awareness, and other relevant stakeholders where deemed appropriate. I think beyond that, this part of this discussion is really intended for our local community to have that conversation about what we find important. And so while this is for that audience at the federal level and leaders even within the state, we find it important to bring this forward for our own community's conversation around this issue.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just have one question, and it's kind of adding on to Councilmember Schoen's question. As I understand, there will be a rally tomorrow evening at CVTC for Medicaid, to protect Medicaid. Is there, and that will be about the time that we'll be voting on this. Do we have any way of communicating with people at that rally about this vote? Is that something we could maybe consider? Okay. Are any members of the public here to speak on this topic tonight? Oh, great. So we have a list, and we'll go through the list and then take people from the audience. Great, thank you. So our first speaker is Sharon Dillon. Hi, thank you so much for coming to speak. If you could watch the little green light right in front of you, that's kind of will let you know when it's time to speak. You'll have about 4 minutes. It will exactly 4 minutes, and it will turn yellow when you're running out of time, and then it will turn red when your time is up. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I was in an abusive relationship for 40 years, and we used food share to support 5 children. Right before the quarantine, I went to live with my daughter and was on SSI and food share, and was able to contribute to their household while I started healing from that relationship. In January, I was able to move into an apartment with HUD subsidy for the first time in my life. Right now, I'm living independent with the help of food share and SSI, and am feeling like I have some sort of self-esteem for the first time in my life. I have 2 adult children, both on the autism spectrum, the oldest and the youngest. The youngest is also unhoused. Without SSI and Medicaid, my child would be more of a burden on the community than he is just being unhoused. He lives in his car and would not be able to get to required doctor appointments, would not be able to get fuel for his car to stay warm in the Wisconsin winters, and would not be able to save to eventually get housing. My oldest wouldn't be able to provide food for their child without SNAP. These programs are more important to the community than our congresspeople seem to understand. It's not just the nutrition, it's not just the doctor appointments, it's the sense of being able to provide without needing to go and ask someone for permission to buy food, or without having to go ask permission or ask for money to go to the doctor. It's being able to do that independently. And I don't know how to relay that information to them. And I'm hoping that you can help me to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Julia Benker.
Hello. Thanks for holding space for this. It's really important. My name is Julia Benker. I want to thank you for considering this resolution and being part of this important conversation. And like I said, holding space for it is really important for those of us who are stressed out from being poor already. And then going through this is unbelievable. So I want to address the importance of Medicaid for not only my health and well-being, but for the 10 families that I provide care for their 12 children. And I'm not the only child care provider who's on these benefits. So if you imagine every child care provider and every family that they're impacting, that's hundreds of thousands of people in our state. And in our city, I don't know what that would be exactly, but you get it. It's impacting every single person in a way. So for me, Medicaid's been my primary insurance since 2009, when I had my first mental health episode. I'll be taking these medications for the rest of my life. One of my medications would be $1,000 without insurance, and that's a little more than half my income, and that's not how I want to spend that money that I have. At times in my life, I had used other insurance to cover my medications. These medications were still unaffordable. They give you a coupon for 80% off, and then it's like $200 a month. So that's how they want you to deal with it. The medications are still unaffordable. I cannot afford to lose Medicaid, and my families cannot afford it either, and neither can you. And even thinking about losing Medicaid is causing some anxiety, but it's a good thing. I can still afford my medications because it's making it a little easier, just like any of us that rely on those things. So I think I really appreciate the folks that are in DC right now and what the conversations they're having too. And I'm really thankful that all of you are willing to speak on behalf of those of us who are concerned about these cuts. And you have an impactful voice, and I appreciate you using it for this. And I hope you do the same when you comment on your resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Joe Maurer.
I just want to say thank you, council persons, for considering this important issue regarding Medicaid, Medicare, and SNAP. When I met my wife, she was recovering from surgery, major surgery she had when she moved up. She's a climate refugee from Nashville. She moved up to Eau Claire, and she relied on the SNAP assistance program because she got massive bills from emergency surgery. And now she's, I'm so proud of her, she's serving as a county board supervisor. So giving back. And she does she does end of life work and works with patients in their home who are inevitably using these services. I also wanted to speak for a friend of mine who wasn't able to be here tonight. She has three young children, and couldn't be here to speak, but she wanted me to come here and just ask, where are all the pro-life supporters? Because if we're supposed to be pro-life, how are we going to support life without any of these essential services? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeremy Gregor.
Great. Hello, Jeremy Gregor at 1725 9th Street. Thank you, Vice President Anderson and City Council for putting on this hearing on the resolution. And thank you to Council Members Jones and Worthman for introducing it. So I'm here to speak in favor of the resolution urging Congress to not make dramatic cuts to Medicaid and other essential programs, which are under threat by the federal government right now under a Republican-controlled U.S. House and Senate. There was that resolution, the roadmap that did include essentially a guarantee that they're going to have to make some cuts if they move forward with their budget reconciliation proposal, and cuts to Medicaid are essentially inevitable if they were to keep moving forward. So this is really a key time to push back. And Representative Van Orden did vote for that roadmap. So I think in addition to this resolution, it's really helpful to visit our representative's office in downtown Eau Claire at 404 South Barstow Street. And I was able to do that about 3 weeks ago to talk about this issue. And it is an accessible office where you can meet with staff and they'll take notes and share it with our representative. But it has been concerning. 3 weeks ago, a couple days before I went to the office, Representative Van Orden was quoted in the paper, and he said, Well, it said that he had praised the first 4 weeks of the Trump administration, and he says that things are going swimmingly. Now it's been another 3 weeks since then, and we've been seeing the federal government and the agencies and the budget looted to benefit millionaires and billionaires who want a tax break. So it's just been really, I think it's been really hard for a lot of people who are trying to create other spaces that people can share their story. And so through Citizen Action of Wisconsin, who I work for, we're actually doing our town hall, not tomorrow night, but rather in 2 weeks from tomorrow. So I have little flyers about that I can pass. I'll pass some this way and then some that way so I can catch you all, but and I'll talk about it in a second. So the town hall that we're going to do is called Hands Off Medicaid. It's going to be at the Chippewa Valley Technical College on Tuesday, March 25th, in the Casper Conference Room. So it'll be in that Business Education Center building. It'll be at 7 o'clock. So really want to invite the public, and I know you have your meeting that night, but maybe you'll be out in time. But just it's important to create these spaces, and I appreciate what you're creating tonight. I just know so many people that are on Medicaid. I've been on what we call the Badger Care program on the state level here when I've needed to, and it's really been a key lifeline for me. I think it's also keeping, it keeps hospitals and clinics with some cash flow as well, and we can support workers and we can support people just having access to care by having this funding, and hopefully we can do what we need to do as citizens and as leaders. So thanks for your support.
Thank you. We've reached the end of our folks on the list, but if anyone from the audience wants to comment on this particular item, you're welcome to come up. Okay. Seeing none, we can move on to our public comment period. And let me just remind about the focus of this period. The guidelines are that this is a time for those living or who own a business in the city of Eau Claire to speak on issues of citywide concern. You'll have 4 minutes to speak. You can only speak one time. Again, once the red light flashes, please finish up your remarks. Please do not comment on any of the 2 previous agenda items. Also, this time is not for personal complaints of city personnel, elected officials, or any person affiliated with the city. And please keep in mind, too, that council members are not allowed to ask questions or comment during this time. But we do appreciate you being here. That's just our rules. This time will last for 20 minutes. And I'm not sure if we have anyone who, let's see, signed. Oh, here we are, signed up here. I think the first person we have is Anton Smet on our list. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Anton Smets. I live on 1307 First Avenue. And after listening to your introduction, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say anything. Because, and I also feel after what we just heard, that my comment is so trivial with all the pain that these people go through. I was the administrator of County Badger Care Medicaid for 13 years, and I know how hard it was, and I do support it. I just wanted to say that you're going to talk about and vote on the fireworks, and I'm a fireworks person, and I would like to let you know that. I deeply appreciate all the work you do. I have a pretty good idea how complex it could be. I'm particularly grateful to Councilman Wertman for his very detailed and excellent reaction to my question. He motivated me actually to tell you something that I believe in, and you can consider that in what you decide tomorrow. So I think there's a difference between district representatives and at large. And I did some AI to kind of see what is that difference. And this is what AI said. Don't believe it necessarily, but that council members at large, they may be impartial. They may rise above the limited perspective of a single district and concern themselves with the problems of the whole community. So if you're going to vote and you think about veterans and pets, et cetera, I think I can see that an at-large person would do that. It also says that council members who represent a specific district may be more responsive to their constituency. And my opinion is that if you're going to vote, you need to vote what your people want in your district. And I know that it is not easy to figure out just what is the feeling, and in that regard, I would ask you if you could ever consider to end this year-long back and forth about that fireworks with a referendum. Just ask us. Let us tell you what we think. And if it ends up to be 70% that say blow them in Carson Park like we brought our kids to, then talk about more important things. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Marianne Koff.
Thank you. And hello, Jessica. She told me that you would be talking about the waste collection tonight. So that's what I want to talk about. I've been a resident of Eau Claire for the last 20 years. I bought a house in Eau Claire, North Side, 12 and a half years ago. I live alone. I have a master's degree in environmental resource management, so this is right in my area of expertise. Worked 12 years in the environmental field. I love the earth, and so I have done everything I can, including getting degrees and working, to try to help the earth. At my home, I reduce all the waste I can so that the landfill doesn't get filled up. I had to take classes to design landfills to minimize, methane and things like that. So I do composting. I have an organic garden. I have butterfly gardens. I have pollinator gardens. I put in native plants so the insects have food and habitat. I put no poisons on. So this is a really important thing to me. And so for the last 12 and a half years, I've had this house, and I have had bi-weekly pickup. And I had no clue that apparently since the 1990s, this city has an ordinance on the books that says everyone who has trash collection in the city has to get their trash picked up weekly. But for 12 and a half years, Box was the first company I had, and now I have Earthbound Environmental Solutions. We did bi-weekly. Had no clue I'm breaking an ordinance, and it works for me because I was paying what? In December, $51 a quarter, which is about $200 a year. So here's how much trash I produce, one person. In 1 week, I will fill up a festival bag. About a third of that, I will then fill with compost, and maybe half of it is recycling. So it worked great every other week to get picked up because I'd have about 2 bags of trash and not much for them, right? The guys would just reach in and pull it out. Unlike my neighbors who have tons of kids, who they have a whole big thing, it was fine. And then in January, I got a letter from Earthbound saying a neighbor complained that another resident was not getting or paying for weekly pickup. They contacted somebody at the city, and apparently were told they had until January 20th to get everybody on board. So I got a letter and I got an extra bill, and now I am paying $75 a quarter or $300 a year, which is $100 more a year I was paying. So think how much that is for one little bag and some recycling. So I did call Earthbound, and I called the Eau Claire City Neighborhood Services.
And excuse me, if you could just wrap up your remarks.
I asked them why it was enacted, and they said, we don't know. The bottom line is you're not getting money from the landfill to put it in. This discourages people like me and anyone else trying to do a good thing I now pay the same amount of money as somebody who has a huge 35-gallon garbage can full every week where I have one bag in it. And I have trash companies that have to come to my house every week, whether or not I have any trash, which I don't. So I ask you to repeal the city ordinance that requires weekly trash pickup to accommodate those of us who produce less waste and help the earth.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have Mike Lee.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. My name is Mike Lee, and I'm the CEO of the Children's Museum of Eau Claire, and I come here in that capacity. As you finalize the tourism agreement with Visit Eau Claire, hopefully tomorrow, I ask that you consider supporting the Children's Museum through this partnership. We play a vital role in attracting visitors to our amazing community, and I'd like to share just a couple examples of how we do that. Last year, the Children's Museum welcomed nearly 90,000 visitors, more than 5,000 of which traveled from outside of 60 miles radius of Eau Claire. In fact, we had visitors who were from 46 different states, the District of Washington, D.C., and 5 different countries. These numbers show that we are truly a destination for families, and I hear the stories firsthand. One such story from a family from Minneapolis who visited in October during one of our free sensory-friendly nights. They made the trip over and stayed the night at a local hotel. They visited Action City and certainly some other attractions in the area before heading home. It was their first time to a children's museum, and they were super impressed. And they absolutely love their time here in Eau Claire. And I'm very confident they'll be back. Another family I got to know a couple years ago came to us from the East Coast, and it was quite this lifestyle, but they were traveling a Midwest tour because both parents worked remotely, and so they took their kids on a summer vacation throughout the Midwest. And they spent a full week here in Eau Claire because of the Children's Museum's summer programs. The kids were enrolled in the summer programs, and then they enjoyed other activities outside of that as well. More recently, we received an email from a family in Green Bay who had visited other children's museums across Wisconsin, but had never been this far west. After seeing a feature about us in a travel website, they made the trip. Later, they emailed us that the museum was one of their favorite, and they thought that Eau Claire was, quote, just gorgeous. These are just a few examples of how we bring families to Eau Claire. Beyond destination visits, we also see numerous road trip families who stopped at the museum to take a break, let their kids burn off energy, and grab a bite to eat at one of the many growing restaurants in the area. We just had another one open up 2 weeks ago. The economic impact of the Children's Museum is real. A recent calculation showed that we contribute $3.2 million directly to the economy annually and about $32.3 million indirectly just to our local economy. To drive this impact further, we partner with Visit Eau Claire to promote our city. When an influencer visits Visit Eau Claire, reaches out to us and asks that we are included in their itinerary. And one of the recent influencers was from Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh, and excuse me, if you could wrap up.
Yep, can do. But they did a show on TV. So as you finalize the tourism contract with Visit Eau Claire, I just ask that you consider the measurable impact the Children's Museum has on tourism. We respectfully request funding at a level similar to what other organizations included in the agreement have. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And next we have Josie Mullen? Not sure. Josie, okay.
Got it.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is J.C. Mullen. I'm the owner, CEO, operator of Trash on Trucks. And I'm here because I read that you guys were talking about garbage after this. So I know that the single hauler option is going to come up. So I just wanted to touch base on it and let everybody know that we are finally in a place where there's friendly competition throughout all of the haulers in the city. So you can ask us anything at any time, and we'll break it down and try to make it easy to understand. What I'm mainly concerned about is a lot of people think that because we're here and there's great local partners, Earthbound, Trash on Trucks, they think that, oh, it'd be really cool to do a single hauler with Trash on Trucks or Earthbound or something like that, right? The reality is that we're so small And a lot of people don't realize the capital and how intensive that is, what goes into getting this thing off the ground and to get it going. If there was a single hauler presented, I believe the majority of us smaller people would be pretty against it, because the only two players in the game that are big enough to take on this kind of project by quadrants or however would be Waste Management or GFL. And we're in a cool spot now where they're friends and nobody really wants, it's hard work, it's stressed out. You might love my garbage service and want to be my customer, and you might be my brother and want it, and you might hate me and definitely not want it. So giving the people the option of a choice. And I want to remind people that from what I understand, the reason that we kind of have the trash liaison, that program in place, and that neighborhood services division is because there was a huge influx of calls and complaints, because during this transition period of box to GFL, balls were getting dropped because it's a huge deal. It was an enormous deal. Drivers were moving from one place to another. GMs and salespeople were all involved in this, and it was, for this area, an emotional event, a significant emotional event, I'll say. So I feel that we, as the haulers, we're not really, I'm not anyway, getting reports on maybe if people are calling to the city to complain about my service or what we're doing wrong. I'm not really getting that feedback, and hopefully it's because there isn't any, which would be cool, because I think we do a great job. But I just want to remind the people that the reason you have the liaison primarily is because of that huge influx of calls that came in the doors for a while. And my understanding is that those calls and complaints have tapered off, and there's things you kind of can't get around. But those reasons you got the liaison would be, those two players would be the only two players left if the single hauler option is presented. I'm not big enough, and I won't be for a long time. So here's my 2 cents on that. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that was the last person on our list. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this public comment period? You're welcome to come up. Okay. Seeing none, we can move on. I guess we will adjourn until our open public meeting of the City Council tomorrow at 4 p.m.
We have a work session.
Yep. We're adjourning, and then we'll have a work session. So
Can I just chime in?
Please go ahead.
I just want to remind people that the slides for tonight and also the work session are on the calendar item on the city's website. So if you're in the audience or want to take a look, you can find those there.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe we'll take like a couple minute stretch break and then have our work session. Great.
I didn't do it, but yeah, we were doing more basic signs.
She had a really good time. They had fun. I really like that idea. And they could come and, right, their public comment. Mhm. Bring him, and we could like maybe have like we could have I don't know, a beverage or something afterwards, or a parent time. All right. Ooh, this presentation is looking really fancily designed. I'm impressed already.
It was actually just the default. It was just the default floor plan.
It looks like a spider made it. It's cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess thank you, City Council members, for some additional time tonight. One of the two things that I'm trying to work on this spring to get some policy decision points before you in time to be included in an operating budget discussion. Our trash operations and then parking as well. Both of them had studies in the last year. Today, just want to get some feedback from the city council with trash operations in the city. Just a brief agenda. I just put together, I handed out the PowerPoint that's on the screen here to everybody, but just go over what the goals of the session are. Brief history to what got us to this point. Some concerns that I've heard from the public and many of you from attending some of the meetings that we've had. Talk about the study a little bit that was done last year to refresh your memories on that, and what the study identified as options for potential changes in the way we administer our trash study or our trash operations comparative to other cities. What the schedule is going forward this spring for public involvement opportunities and council direction, and then I'd welcome any feedback and direction from council at the end of the work session for that. So the goals for today, just to kind of what we touched on, update you where we stand in the trash operations. Go over some of the alternatives that could possibly be before you for a policy decision. Talk about the schedule and then get your feedback on that. So really, we're at this point up until COVID-19. The health department had the primary responsibility for enforcing health safety issues with trash, as well as teamed up with code enforcement at the city for some nuisance complaints would come to the city. John Gettinger was the operations official. There weren't a lot of resources allocated for that. I think the health department had a small level of commitment for resources. I think about 1/10 of a position, or I don't know if Renee, there's Renee. And Renee Craigness is with the health, or Nicole Craigness. Renee's my cousin. Good. Yeah. Nicole Craigness is with the health department. She was involved with more involved with the trash program when they were more involved with it, and now her and Deputy Director Marissa Stanley help our neighborhood services get up and running and help transfer some of their wealth of knowledge. But up until COVID-19, it wasn't the burning issue that it was during COVID-19. There wasn't a lot of staff resources committed to that. There were a lot of complaints from council members that were on the council at the time, probably took some complaints. City managers took complaints about that, and largely the trash companies were having a hard time. There was only 2 major ones at the time. They were having a hard time getting personnel. So they were having labor issues as well as many other industries in the economy were, and they weren't picking garbage up. There was I had a meeting with the haulers last fall, and the second year of the pandemic, which I believe would have been 21 or 22, they had a 33% miss rate. So 33% of the time they weren't picking the trash up on the day that you signed up for it, which we got a lot of phone calls on that. Last year they said, and this was self-reported, this was their numbers, they were at 0.8%. So we're seeing a lot of those complaints go down. We're not getting the same complaints of trash being missed, left out. There was an editorial in the Leader Telegram last week or the week before after the Martin Luther King Day holiday. One or more trash hauler did not pick up. If you were scheduled to get picked up on Monday, they didn't pick up on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I didn't get any calls in the office on that. I didn't hear of any from Billy, but I don't know if it happened to the editor of the Leader Telegram. His garbage didn't get picked up, or why it raised to that. But that was a minor thing that I've heard for that. But otherwise, we are still getting a lot of complaints with trash. But now it's complaints with this neighbor complaining about this neighbor not keeping their trash either in cans, or some of them even your trash receptacle has to be out of view, so it's not in front of your house. It's got to be in your garage or behind your house, and we get complaints on that. So our workload And so to address the complaints that we were having, both in COVID, coming out of COVID and where it's transitioned, as part of the Neighborhood Services Division, we have a position that is half dedicated to trash enforcement. So that position looks at their trucks once a year to make sure that they seal, so leachate or the water that's in there that's polluted doesn't leak out. Make sure that debris shouldn't leak out or shouldn't fly out. But then they also follow up on complaints if there's a residential-based trash complaint for that. So we still have a need for that position, even though the complaints have shifted largely from being the operators to neighbors. But if you were here at when the trash study was revealed, there are still some people that have some complaints with customer service with some of the trash operators, but the majority of the complaints have shifted. So that's how we got into that's how the neighborhood services got into the trash business, to see what other options are out there and what a city of our size has in common or in contrast with our peers. Wisconsin Policy Forum did an in-depth review of our operations and compared them to other peer cities throughout Wisconsin. That was presented to the public in September. And the members provided feedback at that presentation. We get it on social media. I've been to the Sustainability Advisory Committee and taken feedback from members of the SAC, and I, in fact, am going to their meeting next week to talk more about this. And then at the current time, we're going forward, and what I'm doing is taking notes and gathering feedback from the haulers. I've met with the haulers in a non-public meeting, just to have them be able to talk more frank about what they see as improvements that could be made to our ordinances. And then I'm meeting with the public to get the public's feedback, trying to see how those two mesh together, and then come up with options that may be suitable for Eau Claire based upon what our peers are doing and based upon what the residents and the city council in Eau Claire would like to do for that. So again, these were some of the public concerns, but I would say, and I didn't have everybody raise their hands, but the number one concern that I get currently are excessive trucks on the same street. So there's 4 main haulers. Some of them have combination recycling trash trucks. Some have separate ones. But you could have 4 or potentially up to 8 trucks on the same street if everybody has different haulers and if the haulers send out different trucks. Poor customer service, that's something that we really we don't have a lot of control over, but that with the private market, if you don't like your customer service, you can go to a smaller hauler, and that seems to be somewhat of a prevalent theme out there. Bi-weekly recycling, like the public comment that you heard tonight, it's available in other communities. It's not available in Eau Claire. Our ordinances say it has to be picked up weekly for that. So, as well as looking at how our operations are delivered, we're looking at the ordinances too. So that would be a potential ordinance change that wouldn't have a fiscal component, that could be enacted sooner rather than waiting for next year's budget for that. So bi-weekly recycling and trash pickup, there's a lot of interest, or at least I don't know if it prevails through the community, but there was a lot of comments at the public meeting for the study about strengthening and expanding our composting ordinances to make it more robust. Right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, on this, but with our composting, you can't haul composting across lot lines. So you can't have like a community. Some communities have a drop-off, like neighborhood composting things where you can drop it off. We can't have that in Eau Claire. So yeah, if I lived next door to Nicole and I wanted to bring my banana peels over and put them on our compost pile, I'd be violating ordinance in the city. So.
Ordinance that we could change?
Yep.
Or is that a state thing?
No, that's a ordinance that's in our books for that. So, and those are things that we're looking at. There's a lot of support for the smaller haulers at that meeting. There was initially, when the haulers announced that they weren't going to continue the large item and lawn waste pickup, there was a lot of anxiety and some disdain. But last year was the first year for that, and it really wasn't a ton of calls that we took for that. They're still offering it, but Earthbound, for example, offers to pick up your lawn waste for $2 a bag if you're a customer, which is a very modest price. Some of them don't pick up lawn waste, like Waste Management won't pick it up because they're set up with their trucks and their haulers that they have concerns. The two reasons for number 6 on here was they did not charge for it, and that was an agreement from 25 years ago. They didn't charge for it, so it was a cost that they weren't recouping, and they indicated with the large items that they were having workman's comp claims because those large items are different than the carts that they roll out. So that made the list as concerns, but it wasn't as, to be honest, it wasn't as big over the last year as I would have expected. Cost, there's a lot of discussion about cost in the study sites that we're about 30% higher than our peer communities for residential cost, but it wasn't a forensic auditing, so I don't know exactly why, if we have longer routes, if we have higher tipping fees where everybody goes to ours versus other communities. I know when you get over to Brown County, they have a waste facility, so they have a publicly operated, so that could go into it. But cost is something that it was noted that we spend more. Anecdotally, members of the audience at that study meeting were property managers in Menominee and Chippewa Falls, and they confirmed it, but it was just one person there. So that it's a concern, but I wouldn't say it was a scientific analysis for that. Neighborhood quality of life, and that goes into the complaints we're getting now, where the original trash ordinances were for health, life safety, or human health hazard issues, as well as the overall quality of life in a neighborhood, and not promoting blight. And then the cleanliness of streets, nobody likes to see garbage out in the streets for it. So that's what I've taken so far for the main public concerns with our trash system. So the trash study went and looked at it, and for a city our size, a mid-sized city in Wisconsin, in the Midwest, we have a very unique trash operation. We have almost a full open market. We regulate the days that they can pick up. We regulate the size of the trash bins that they can put out, but that's not being followed. So we're going to update the propose an update to the ordinance for that. Now those big ones are 96 gallons, and our ordinance says 48 gallons, the smaller ones. And so our code hasn't been updated for quite some time, and he noted that, the studier from the policy forum. And the study pointed out that the city residents pay more than comparable communities for trash service. But yeah, the majority of cities have single service either provided by the city or the city contracts with a hauler. More so than having, for our size and larger, more so than having a free market type system that we have. So the trash study just gave some options on what other communities are doing. One option is always the do nothing option, where we try to improve the system we have, try to address the deficiencies that are causing either an increase in price or frequency of pickup, or hindering composting. Make minor operations to it. The most extreme option is the city provides all trash and recycling services. We buy trucks and we hire people, and we go around and we start providing the service, like Milwaukee does that, Oshkosh does that. It's, I believe, $750,000 for a garbage truck. For a fancy. If we don't get a Lane Berg quality one, we could get one for maybe $700,000. But if he wants the leather seats in it, it'll be $750,000. But that's on the fringe, and then in between are a bunch of different options. So we can have And each option in between could provide either the city sending out a bill, city contracting with one or more haulers to provide the service, one hauler for the entire city. Everybody gets a bill, and then that's competitively bid. Everybody gets a bill with their water bill, only it says water, sewer, storm sewer, and trash on there, so it would be a utility. Every year we would open it up, or every 3 years we'd open it up for new bids and provide the service that way. Same thing could be done. The city could restrict haulers, and then the hauler could send the bill out instead of the city running the bill through. We could divide the city into districts, and each district, like 5 districts or 10 districts, and then each district can only have one hauler in it, and then each district has a day assigned to it. If you have 10 districts, try to work it so nobody can have more than 3 or 4. So the big companies can have bid on more, but the smaller companies still have districts that are open for them. I don't know what happens if Waste Management puts it on all 10 districts and they're the low bid on all 10. They can only have 4. How you choose, it's some innovative bidding on it, but that's a potential middle option on it. So these are all things that we've been talking about internally. I don't know with some of the council members that have been more engaged. What I was hoping for is if there was something that stood out with council that said, you know what, we know every year budgets are tight. I don't think that we're really interested in buying the garbage trucks and getting into the trash business. Then that would be one. If I knew there wasn't an appetite, that we wouldn't spend that much time developing that option on it. Conversely, if there is one, we're not interested in the hauler setting the bills out themselves. If we're going to get into the trash business, we want the city to have more control over it. So if you have any feelings one way or the other that we can cross stuff off, or if there's an idea that you think is missed on here. I know there's one council member that shared an idea that wasn't something that our peer communities do, but it's kind of splitting, having different operators for recycling and different from garbage collection, but it would be a single company for each of those. He'd have 2 of the 4 potentially would have that. So, but with each of those options, like you heard, the trash on trucks and earthbound is smaller than trash on trucks. Single option or single operator for the entire city may reduce the options in the future. You have 4 that could potentially bid on it. If 2 of them don't even put in on it, they may not remain viable businesses, and you won't have that 3 years from now. You'll be down to just 2, and so just something to consider when we get down the road. So this was the anticipated schedule that I have going forward. After getting feedback from the council tonight, if you have feedback, I want to have another meeting similar to what the trash study unveiling was. Probably have it over at the library as early as next week. Just to tell the members of the public any feedback that I get tonight, as well as what we've started looking at as far as, the ordinances even say 5 in the morning to 5:30 at night for trash operations. And, does that need to change? The garbage size, the biweekly, the number of days per zone. Can we, instead of the haulers having 2 days per zone, can we get that down to 1 day? Then at least instead of having 4 operators over 2 days, every week, if we go bi-weekly, some streets, if they're smaller, may have, less operators over 1 day in 2 weeks. So going through those. So I have a public meeting to get public comment. I'm going to the Sustainability Advisory Committee next week. They had took a ton of notes from them. They were very interested in the trash questions. We'll work on developing the options based on the feedback. Have a meeting with the haulers that are invited to all the public meetings. Try to work up, those options, present them to say, how does this sound? Have another work session with council. I put it in green if you feel that you would like that before it goes to council. If you don't feel another work session is necessary, then we would do the normal ordinance introduction with the first reading, and then 2 weeks later we'd have a public hearing. and then a legislative vote on that in May, hopefully. So if there's anything that, if we send out, the one advantage if we were to start a utility and we send out the bills, right now, I look at this last year, the license fees went up quite a bit for the haulers, and we're trying to get money from the haulers to pay for the half a position that is enforcing trash. And it's hard because different haulers have different sizes, and so if you raise it all in license fee, the small haulers pay the same as the large ones. And then if you put it on trucks, they're not all running the same number of trucks. If we sent out a bill, we could just add an administrative fee to the bill. If it's $100 a quarter, the city's administrative fee might be $5 or whatever it ends up being, and then that can pay for the trash enforcement that we have. So it would streamline that. In the absence of that, we would look at trying to fit those fees, the increases, to make sure that we're funding that half a position. So I'm all ears.
Yeah, Councilmember Brewster.
Thank you, Acting Council President. Yeah, so I have a large number of things to say about this. First of all, I would be very hesitant about doing a contract with a single hauler, especially one, I know at least one of the two big ones that we have around here is owned primarily by private equity, and they're historically pretty vicious at hollowing out customer service departments. And so I can imagine us, them being the lowest bidder, but then the customer service on them is just appalling, and then we're responsible for having picked them.
Sure.
Not to mention that then nothing else around here exists the next time it comes up for bid, and then we're kind of just stuck with ever increasing contracts with the one company that's left. So that's something that is not preferable from my perspective. I'm actually very interested in sort of a municipalized version, if we can figure out a way to do that with some degree of equity, especially with our small companies. If we're buying trucks, maybe, if it's going to put them in a situation where they're no longer viable, perhaps we can buy their trucks or something like that, so they're not just like bankruptcy with a whole bunch of debt or something like that. I would like to make sure that we, if we do go with a citywide system, either contracted or municipalized, that everybody has access to composting. To my mind, on some level, that will make it less likely, I think, that the larger ones will bid on it, because they would have to, in order to bid on it, they would have to develop that, or perhaps even subcontract it out to maybe Earthbound or whatever. I'm not sure if we're supposed to use names, but it's Earthbound doing composting, if anybody didn't know.
So you're only in favor of everyone access to composting if it's municipalized, or would you support an ordinance change that if you're getting a license?
If you're getting a license in the city, you need to do it either yourself or outsource it.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
And then but maybe if it's an outsourced thing, the composting doesn't have to be every week. If it has like a sealed container or something, I'm very interested in reducing the wear and tear on our streets with especially the large scale trucks. I don't know if Director Ness has any commentary on that, but residential streets, those are often the heaviest vehicles that are on the streets regularly, and they're not, to my understanding, they're not always, well, you know this. Why am I even telling you about trash trucks on residential streets?
If you Google it, there's a study out there that you can find from SEH, the big consulting firm in Chippewa.
One thing that I think would be really cool if we could figure out a way to do is, I know that Altoona is also sort of laissez-faire with their trash thing. If there could be some talks with them about, maybe collaborating on some regulation. I think there could be potential cost savings for both municipalities in that regard, as well as just, you know, working together with people on something, you know, strengthens ties and collaborative energy, for lack of a better term. Yeah, that's all I got for now. I can see what other people have to say.
And it's Andrew next. Oh, Jess, sorry, you're right in my blind spot.
That's okay. Thank you. I have two questions, and then I was going to share my feedback. First question, so I'll just also preface this by saying I'm very hesitant / opposed to doing a municipally owned trash utility, but I am curious, very much value the input of staff on this. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with our amazing folks in community services that would be maybe taking on this challenge, if council moved in that direction, but if they would be really hesitant about this, if they foresee a lot of challenges, or if it's something they'd be really eager to take on and they see a lot of value. Just curious to hear staff input on that.
Director Berg continually tells me how excited he would be to take on a trash program in community services. No, I'm just kidding. I think.
I can't tell if there's sarcasm in here
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. No, that was steeped in sarcasm.
Blink once for yes and two for no, if you really mean that.
I really couldn't. I couldn't even remember.
So
I'll defend myself.
It's
we would definitely embrace it. If that's the direction you chose to go, we would embrace it. We joke back and forth about who's going to run it, but if you decide you want to do it and it's in community services, we would embrace it. So.
And today is not opposite day, right?
I don't have fingers crossed, nothing.
No, starting up a big program like that and buying the trucks and hiring the people, it probably has as much of a difficulty with the financial aspect of it as it does getting it up and running. And then you have the issue of, you know, is it going to put the small businesses, is it going to make Earthbound and Tots not viable? So we wouldn't have that option. And you jump in with it. Communities have done it. There was a community that it was a case study in one of my classes a couple of semesters ago where the city was exploring it and they carved out a zone for themselves. They bought a truck and the city competed against the private haulers in there. And they had to do everything, you know, for cost, and they had to compete, and they had customer service, and that community ended up providing better customer service than the haulers did, and the mayor of that city ended up expanding the program, but they didn't jump in with it. But you're probably looking at $5 to $10 million worth of equipment, well, plus the bins too. And then if we provide the bins, it was $3 million worth of bins. For that?
We've been looking at rough numbers, and you know, for a really good industrial garbage bin, they're pushing $100 a piece. So if we have 30,000 customers, you have $3 million in just garbage bins, and then if you have recycling bins as well that are similar, you know, that could be a $6 million investment just to get cans. So it's a big investment. It's something we'd really have to study to jump in. You'd have to have a lot of trucks, you know, which are very expensive. You'd have to have a shop to house the trucks. You'd have to have mechanics area to work on them. So there's a lot of startup investment in that, and that's just something we need to think about, you know, before we dive right into it. So.
Yeah.
What was the amount of the trucks?
750,000
Yeah,
per,
so
per vehicle.
a really fancy high vis.
Overall. Do you want to turn your microphone on, Clara?
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
And I barged in. I know there's other people asking, but I just missed what, I didn't write down what you said. Was it 30 million? Well, how much?
No, I would say we license, I think, we used to license a whole lot more trucks this year. They backed off. Licensed about 12 trucks between the haulers, 12 to 14 trucks. Okay. So assuming they're not at 100% capacity, if it was just one, maybe 6 to 8 possibly.
So if we had,
didn't catch the dollar figure.
The lesser vehicles, if we didn't get the fancy ones, you know, you're talking probably $500,000 a piece. So you'd have $4 million in trucks, $6 million in cans, garage space, people, you know, employees and whatnot. So there's a lot of capital investment to start this up. But
and even though the the utility would pay that debt service back for that. We'd have to bond for that. We have a number of large projects, and Kitsy will get into this when we get into the budget presentations about our debt limit that we can issue for that. Council has a 3.5% debt limit policy. State law is 5%. So with a $22 million PFAS facility, Transfer Center has some debt for it. And then we have a sanitary sewer, a wastewater treatment plant project that's coming up. Number of water, probably not much more on water, but we have a number of projects that are essentials that we have to provide the service for that. It'll be interesting to see how that debt hits with where our debt limit is for that. So that's something to, even though it's paid for, like water, like the wastewater treatment plant, it's not coming out of the general fund, but it still counts against our debt limit that we can issue. So that'll be a back consideration to jumping in on this to consider.
Just as a forewarning too, we do have a couple substantial wastewater projects coming up, or slated to come up here, so they were bypassed during our last renovation because they still had some life left in the equipment, but there are some big ones coming forward, so you'll see that too, and that's something that Dave just touched on, that all that counts against our debt limits.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
for all of that. That was really helpful.
I don't know if that's too much.
No, it was good, I think, and very helpful. The other question I had was, and I read the trash study, like what feels like 100 years ago, and I like skimmed it again before the meeting, and I didn't see, so there's a chart in the study, which I feel like our local media picked up when the study was announced, around the cost to Eau Claire residents that pay for trash pickup, and where residents are paying something like double our peer communities. I don't remember in the study if it talks about the three comparables, so Wausau, La Crosse, and Oshkosh. What structure they use. I don't remember if any of them are municipally run or if those are like contracting with a single provider.
Oshkosh was municipally run.
Okay.
And they had the lowest price also.
Correct. No,
No.
they were, Wausau was the lowest price.
Wausau and La Crosse are lower than Oshkosh.
158. So La Crosse,
It's okay, we don't have that answer
yeah,
right
it looks
now.
like La Crosse is a single hauler. Contracts for collecting waste, 3.1 million.
I will say
Yeah.
though, compared to Eau Claire, La Crosse is very dense. And so that collection, at least in the core of La Crosse, would be much more efficient than it would be for
Yeah.
the.
Yeah, they contract with a single hauler,
Yeah.
so it's not
Sure. Yeah, I guess so those were my questions, and then the feedback I wanted to share kind of on policy. So kind of, I think of these in two different categories. As it relates to policy, or like modernizing our ordinances, I would be in favor of increasing people's ability to compost. So I know we talked about just like even private composting, there's kind of rules around that prohibit some composting. So I would like to see those rules, I guess, relaxed or allowing people to compost more easily. Allowing biweekly pickup. We heard from a constituent tonight about how that impacts people and can increase the cost beyond what they otherwise are already paying for. Changing hours of operation, we talked a little bit about. And then the other category of feedback I want to share is specific to like kind of the model of service we provide. And I have like one other little thought, and I don't know if it belongs in my first category or the second, but in order to like better protect our infrastructure, which we talked about already, lowering emissions, lowering costs to the community, I think it makes a lot of sense to move towards a structure with various zones in the city and contracting with multiple haulers to try and like mitigate. I definitely heard from people that want to have like some variety and competition in terms of the private businesses that provide this service, and I think like moving to just a single provider for the whole city obviously makes that inherently impossible. So if we can find some middle ground, I think that would be my preference. and then requiring compost, which also is discussed of everyone. So those are like all my thoughts, and the one piece that I don't know what category it fits into, if it's like an ordinance thing, if it's somewhere in the potential contracts and the structure we move to. But if there's a way we can incentivize people to produce less waste, like I would love to see that. I think in rural areas that happens because you pay, when you take waste to a landfill, you're paying by weight typically. So it's incentivized to produce less waste. I don't know what that looks like in this structure or within the city, but if there's any way we can incentivize people to generate less waste through all of this, I would love to see that. And those are all my thoughts.
And with your last, I guess I had two follow-up questions with that, or one comment. With your last comment, that was a comment that the haulers made about the large item pickup, about not picking it up anymore. That, and I'm like, you know, really? With that, I was a little bit skeptical that when you have the large item and it's free for people to pick up, they bring everything out instead of trying to put it on Marketplace for free and repurpose it or with a pack it up and pass it on. So that actually came up again at the Sustainability Advisory, and they had mentioned something in there. One of the people there said that they saw that logic in that. So that's one thing to consider with the large item pickup, at least, that hasn't been provided by them. And then with your hours of operation, right now it's from 5 in the morning to 5:30 at night. Would you like to expand it, or what would you like for guidance with that?
Shift it to later in the morning. I've gotten complaints from residents about the early morning pickup. I haven't heard complaints like later in the day. I would say past 8 a.m. I've never heard complaints, even like 7 a.m. But you know, probably 5:30 to 7 is when I've heard people have complaints and take issue with just sort of like quality of life, and people work like night shifts, and when they're trying to sleep during the daytime hours, it can be disruptive.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess while I still have my mic on, I'll just say I am hesitant to move towards a municipal system. Just I've seen in other communities some of the challenges. It's really dangerous, actually, and like just a lot of environmental enforcement related issues that then the municipality has to take on. So I favor just not having the city staff have to manage those types of headaches and challenges and safety issues.
Thank you. I think I saw Andrew and then I saw Josh.
Thank you. Thanks for doing all this work. I'll get behind both the expanded composting in communities, what the DNR terms community style. I used to know the yard differences on this, but the DNR already has a sort of a guidebook on how to do more community style compost outside of the hauler compost. I think that throwing leaves in the landfill seems really ridiculously wasteful in a whole number of ways. Like, first of all, leaves are really good on the lawn for wildlife and for your lawn. And so, as much as we can disincentivize having leaves end up in the landfill, they can be composted or kept on the lawns. We should encourage that. Something like 40% of all waste is organics that goes into our landfill, so diverting that is a huge deal. I'm not completely opposed to looking at the municipal if we think there's a benefit to cost and we can run it in a way that it makes sense. I think I'm more inclined to support doing the zones but somehow we're in charge of the billing, the city's in charge of the billing. That might also provide us an opportunity to fully fund a position that works on environmental, especially waste concerns in our community. We live on rivers, and oftentimes waste that doesn't get in our trash cans goes into our rivers, and so there's direct correlation between making sure we have environment, like we're following these environmental regulations, and our environment. The idea that you brought up, Dave, which is there maybe even an option where certain companies provide certain things, like Earthbound were to do the composting for a community, or ways of thinking about that could be another approach. Recycling a waste and a compost. Granted, you start to get into more truck trips into those neighborhoods every week, which is something I'm very against. And then hours of operation, I would support moving it later in the day. We already have a noise ordinance that pretty much you could just say, hey, based on our noise ordinance, you shouldn't be making this much noise in the morning hours. So that seems like a pretty good place to start from our already existing ordinance. I think that's all I have.
Thanks. Josh?
Thanks. Yeah, like the system we have now is not something anyone ever designed from scratch. So that's unfortunate. But we have it, and then I guess I have some concerns about impacts that are going to affect our local haulers. I really enjoy seeing local businesses take up and fill these spots. And then I'm just concerned about any changes we have that's going to favor the larger haulers at the expense of our homegrown organizations. I guess this echoing agreement would be for looking at the biweekly pickup and the composting. Districts, the problem with districts, I'd only be in favor of that if somehow it seems impossible if all the providers offer the same services, because if I want composting, but I'm in waste management district, and I don't get it, and that'd be unfair. That'd seem really unfair. It'd be extremely unpopular if somebody couldn't have a service they wanted. So districts seem problematic for that reason. The only kind of new idea I have, and I don't know if it's viable, if we wanted to streamline the number of providers, something crazy like maybe we have one. There can be one non-local based provider in town, and then the other ones can still be here as well. So that would make a level the playing field to allow the larger and the smaller both compete on a similar thing. Because I'm really in favor and hesitant to do anything that's going to hurt our local haulers. But maybe you have to be local, except that we can have one non-local and the rest can be local. That's something I just thought of maybe to keep the local ones in the game. So that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you. Aaron? Or no, sorry, Claire go, because I don't think she's had a chance to speak, and then Aaron. Is that all right?
Charlie.
Oh, and Charlie. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, I know. I kind of want to let him go
I'm going to try to go
first.
the first round of everybody.
You go, Charlie.
I don't have much to add. I would just say that I'd be very curious to see some more financials or what it might look like should the city take the path of the case study you mentioned of like a certain quadrant. If the city kind of handles a certain section in terms of trash pickup, and then what that could kind of venture into a potential larger full citywide. I wouldn't be in favor of obviously jumping in full send, like the city just takes it over completely, but I think it could be very interesting what it could look like if the city does just operate a portion. I don't want it to be a big burden of collecting more information, but if there could just be some additional numbers gathered, I think that could be a very interesting option.
Thank you. Gosh, the thing that I'm struggling with the most is we have 4 haulers today, and most of the options that we're talking about with the city getting more involved really could reduce the number of private entities that would even be available for contracting out in the future. If we contract with 1, if we contract with 2, however we contract that out. A trash hauler isn't just going to appear, every year or every few years when we're up for contract. So I'm a little concerned about minimizing or reducing the competitiveness that, I just can't believe we have 4 haulers and our prices are so high with that much competition. So something's not quite working in a simplistic way about competition, but I'm concerned about reducing the number of players unless the city were to go all in. This is, we're going to do this ourselves. And I'm sensitive to this bonding situation that you talked about and the initial capital it would take to start something like that up. So I'm kind of doing a lot of this right now. I'll comment about the biweekly pickup, composting, and making that much more readily available And I love what Councilmember Schoen just said about how do we incentivize people to produce less waste. I love the fact that you said, and I do kind of believe that not having this free bulk item pickup is going to make it people like, oh, now what am I going to do with this couch? I'm going to be more creative about what I'm going to do with it instead of just, it's producing so much large trash. So I don't know how we be creative about that, but it's understanding people's behaviors and trying to still give people as much choice as possible, but doing everything we can, being thoughtful with our policy to try to incentivize and encourage the care for our environment. So, yeah, I mean, I do think of waste as a utility. I think of it as a public, public health, a public good. So really at a high level, boy, it does make sense to me, like water and wastewater trash pickup as the kind of thing a municipality could and should. But we are a smaller city, and the investment it takes to dive into it, given that we are where we are, I'm sensitive to that. And let's see, a lot of people made a lot of really good comments, and I really appreciate all of that. I am also more interested in a little bit more detailed financial analysis, like Charlie said, because, how do we really compare? These are pretty different kinds of systems that we're talking about, and I don't know how we can guesstimate, but I think that would help me be able to know where to fall on the whole question of how much to get the city involved. And I also love this. If the city having a zone can make everybody more competitive, I'm not sure how. I don't know if you have any comment about that. I mean, just because, say, the northeast part of the city has city-run utility, how does that make the other haulers in the other part of the city be more equitable with what the city provides? Because it seems like they wouldn't have to. They're like, well, this is my district, and I'm long-term public.
What I would say, and especially with a data analysis guru at the head of our organization, we would want to have data, some kind of measurables, not only financial, but customer service, customer satisfaction. And then when it comes time for licensing, your license,
that's right.
The other 4 haulers can still go everywhere in the city
Compete.
Except for the zone. Your license isn't good for the zone. And then, at the start of the year, January 1st, we start with ours, and we track and measure and see if we're hitting the efficiency goals that we would estimate if we're able to service, say, 5,000 homes per week with a truck, or I don't know the efficiency rates, but measure it, I would give it, a year or two to see if the city's able to provide better service at a lower cost in that area, and can that be expanded up or not, but I mean, that one community, it was something that they wanted to try because they were having a poor track record and increasing prices, and
well, I'm also sensitive to the economies of scale, though, too.
Right.
When you piece it up into a bunch of small pieces, you've got a lot of overhead in a few different organizations that makes it more costly. Can I ask one more question? And do our haulers themselves have any sense, and I'm particularly interested in our 2 local haulers, why our costs are higher?
they don't have when we've talked in private about it, they just say, well, there's other factors, but they don't get into their business model and, open up the books to say that. They do say with, I think it was Brown County, or Appleton, maybe one of the ones on the eastern side of the state, they have a county-owned landfill.
That's what I was wondering, if it has something to do with the landfill
their tipping
itself.
fee is less.
Because we may be stuck with that if we take some of this on as a city.
But why are we paying more than Chippewa and Menominee when they're all going apparently to the same 7 Mile Creek landfill? That came up in the meeting, and
right.
I don't have good answers for that. But I do when I meet with them. They're a good group. They're very good to work with. They're full of ideas, and I always every meeting I'm like, if you guys have ideas on how you can lower your costs, is there stuff in our ordinances that are making that 30% something that's outside of your control, or do you have suggestions? So I continually am pushing them to try and come up with business ways that we can still provide for, no public health hazards with trash and good customer service and lower the costs on it. So the one thing they did say was going with bi-weekly and the larger bins for recycling for stuff. So we'll see.
I just wonder how much of that has to do with scale
Mhm.
and the overhead with our smaller entities. I don't know. I want to support our local businesses, but.
Thanks. When let's say we were to municipalize and bond for this, like how fast do we usually pay things off if it's for the water utility, if it's a utility thing?
I know a lot of our bonds are 20-year bonds.
20-year bonds.
For that, I don't know if like parking ramp maybe 30 years. There are some shorter ones for vehicles if we borrow for vehicles, but we try not to because they don't have the lifespan. So with my lack of being a finance expert, I know a lot of our bonding is 20-year bonding for stuff. And would you say a garbage truck will last 20 years with proper maintenance?
Oh, I kind of doubt it.
You doubt it?
I would think it would be
15.
15.
So
15 would be pushing it.
then you're probably looking at a 10-year bond, 15-year max, because you don't want to be paying past on a bond when the asset is gone. So
Yeah. So I guess, assuming we have 30,000 households in Eau Claire and they're all going to be forced to get garbage, because right now there's a bunch that don't actually have garbage at all.
Right. Yeah.
Which is something that we should be working on. I remember when we were talking about this a number of years ago, but health department, what was the number for that? Like 5,000 households in the city of Eau Claire don't have trash?
I think it was a little lower than that,
But in the thousands.
I think so.
Yeah. So there's tons of people that are either filling up their garages or basements with trash before they move. There's people filling up businesses, dumpsters behind their buildings, the trash cans at Quick Trip, and some of that is certainly, caused by poverty, I imagine, but, some of it's just people being people too. But yeah, so even if we're bonding for, $20 million to get this started, which is like way higher than I think we would need to do, we're looking at about $35 to $45 a year for 20 years to set the whole thing up per household, which doesn't seem that bad to me if we're doing it for much cheaper.
Sure.
So, I mean, yeah, like that, I know it goes against their bond limit, and that's a whole nother thing to consider. But if we're saving people $50 a year and charging them $40 a year to take care of the bond thing and presumably giving them better customer service, don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but I would hope that we would figure out a way to do that. Another thing to consider is to my understanding, we are allowed to partially fund positions that have oversight of this from this money. So if we have a utility like the water utility or something like this, they could both pitch in, on like Councilman Worthman said, a sustainability coordinator position.
Yep.
But not only that, so whoever's in charge of the garbage utility answers to Lane, who answers to you two, and so little tiny bits of your salary can all be covered by that as well. And it feels weird to be talking about like $15,000 here, but that's what it's going to probably come down to. So that's something to consider as well. As far as Earthbound goes, my understanding is that the whole reason they're even a garbage company is because they had to be. When they first got started, they wanted to be just compost. Now that they are a garbage company, I'm not sure if they would want to go to just doing compost.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, that's a discussion to have with them. But that's just something, maybe that's something we want to put in or look at our code changes. So if somebody wants to do just compost, like a little mom and pop compost operation, maybe we should let people do that if we're not going to bring everything in-house and municipalize it. And the final thing, you know, we're talking about wanting to support the local haulers, but, you know, Trash on Trucks is a bit bigger than Earthbound, but Earthbound is what, like 1,200 subscribers, and Trash on Trucks is maybe twice that. So, you know, compared to, you know, GFL and Waste Management, like, neither of them have even close to the capacity to do the entire city, as JC was saying. So if it's something where we're gonna try to support local haulers, like, and not bring a system in and municipalize it, then really the only option we have is to do districts. And I think then you lose some of your economies of scale and everything like that. Like, it's not an absolute natural monopoly like water or power is,
right,
but it's leaning towards a natural monopoly where competition doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah, I agree.
And last thing I wanted to say is in reference to Councilmember Serrano's question, like what would it do in terms of you know, forcing other people to keep their costs down to have a city district? That's basically the philosophy behind the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority. They generate electricity, and like the entire country uses that for their public service commissions. You know, if somebody's justifying, you know, a rate increase, they look at what the TVA is, what it costs them to generate electricity. Or at least that's how it was before deregulation. I'm not sure if that's still going on. But that was part of the philosophy behind that. So if you know, people are getting great service from the city in their district for, you know, $150 a year, and it's costing $210 outside of that district, people can look at that and be like, all right, what's going on here? So I think that is all I had. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Josh?
Thanks. So everything I just said earlier, I guess I like the idea that we have these local companies that are seemingly pretty popular with their customers. But then again, the role of the city council isn't to make sure local trash operators are operating our goal of city council is to provide the best service to the community as a whole. So it'd be great if whatever that looks like could incorporate these local trash haulers, but that unfortunately shouldn't be the end goal. So prefacing, I guess, addendum to all my comments from earlier is that, you know, we do need to do what works best for everybody as a whole. So we'll see what that looks like.
Thank you. And I have a couple thoughts. One is that I'm strongly opposed to municipalizing, and part of that is because I have been very sternly warned by people with city administrative experience who are not in this room that it is a money pit and a big risk. So that makes me anxious. So I have to really look at the financials to be persuaded, because I think that taking on a lot of debt and a lot of more customer service responsibility, it's a big risk, right? And if you're keeping the situation as it is, or closer to as it is, it's a much less of a risk for the city. I feel that especially keenly right now because of the conversation we had during our public comment period. We don't know what's going to happen with our federal government or what kind of costs that's going to put onto us and what that's going to do to our community. And I feel like now is a time to hold on to our resources, stay alert, and watch and wait to see where, in case there's some sort of triage that's needed to do. I wouldn't want to invest a lot and go really boldly in this direction, just because I have anxiety about the finances not adding up, and I have anxiety about needing that money for other and more urgent concerns. I'm also concerned because we're hearing from residents that the trash situation is working well, and again, I think we're at a point in our time with a lot of uncertainty, and if something is working well, just keep it going. Let it go. If I do think a trash utility type thing could work where we could make sure that we're getting compensated for the enforcement, but if something is working right now, I think we need to stay the course with things that are working and not sort of boldly go in another direction until we have a sense of our community's overall stability over the next coming years. Because what we're seeing at the federal level is profoundly destabilizing and will be destabilizing for our community if it's not checked. And so it makes me feel like we need to be very.
Roger that.
Thank you. So that's all I have to say, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought I had earlier. I didn't quite mention, and you hit exactly, is that, you know, the danger is always going and fighting the last war. And things were bad for a while, but now they're getting better. Let's see where things are going for a while. So yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about that earlier too.
I just wanted to chime in with two pieces of information. One is that in our ventures in trash, we learned about how, and the trash haulers, and probably Lane could talk a lot more about this, but that the industry is evolving, so the technology is evolving. So when we met with Joe Moore from Fond du Lac, he talked about how they have municipal trash hauling, and their trucks are sophisticated, and it just takes one driver, and it was like in the thousands and thousands of houses within like a 6-hour period, and they have automated hands, but then that requires certain types of bins, and the bins have to be placed in a certain area. So just to say, there's like, if we do want to explore it more, there's different models that really impact the costs. And to the point of the council members Worthman and Brewster about being able to carve out funding for a sustainable, like a waste reduction or sustainability. One thing we learned about, and maybe Elaine could talk more about this recently, was that when the wastewater treatment plant, when we make these investments, I don't know if it's really realistic, but this one kind of really ambitious idea was to, if you could co-locate the brush site there or composting, and then start accepting grease, and then you would take the biosolids from the wastewater treatment plant and mix them all, and it creates this, you could make this like high-end fertilizer. And but mainly the point is that when you look for like trying to reduce our carbon footprint, those really big systems that involve lots and lots of waste and energy, that this trash is one of them, and it could potentially relate to our other big systems. And so it was kind of interesting to think about. It was kind of like a little bit mind-bending to think about how to be agile as it relates to these major, like you said, Clara, like the major utilities in the metaphorical sense of what we're delivering. And I'm sure Lane can tell you more about it, but I just loved hearing about it. But you'd also need somebody to champion it and figure out the details of it, which would be potentially funded by that.
Mr. Trash over there. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Parkes.
One last thing I wanted to bring up to Jess's point about reduction of waste. I know a lot of companies offer different sized bins. We might make that something that's mandatory as part of, I don't know if they all do or not, but we might just have those options for like 3 sizes of bins. If you really can reduce your trash, you can pay less, kind of thing. So just a thought going off her point.
To add on to that, maybe even charge more than half as much for half the size. So if you can go small and save that capacity, not only does it cost you less, but it costs you even less. Like basically the opposite of what we do with water.
About the small bins, we have the smallest bin that exists, but it still could fit like a month's worth of our garbage, because we are like the person who spoke today, we produce 1 bag for 2 people at most per week. And so, gosh, even smaller than what is currently the little tiny bins. I mean, maybe it's biweekly that would be another option for. And I'm thinking about other people who really, really are very conscientious about their trash. How to, even go one step further, perhaps in some way.
Do you feel like you have directions?
Yes.
Good. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks again to
Yes, thank you so
Solberg,
much.
to Dave and Stephanie and Lane, Health Department. Thank you so much. Really, it's a big topic, and I know there's so many factors to consider, big economic, health. So I really, really appreciate all the work. work here.
Before we adjourn, I was just wondering if it would be possible to quick hear from the health department, like 2 minutes as to the thoughts on the 2-week thing? Like why that's something that you support, if that's all right?
Poor Nicole, she's like, you didn't give me any heads up.
I know, I was like, oh, okay. Hi, guys. So we've been doing some research and kind of looking at some of the different trash options that Dave was speaking with you guys about earlier. The studies that I found actually didn't find a lot of health and human health hazards related to biweekly trash pickup. So as long as we're educating people how to close the top of their bins, how to bag their trash appropriately, how to bag their potential biohazards of like dog feces and diapers. If we're teaching our constituents how to do that and they're closing the lids, there's a lot less risk of like odor and vermin and flies related to that. If people have bins that don't close or they have like the small recycling containers, that can impact that with some of those flies, vermin, odors. And then the other thing to consider is that if you miss that bi-weekly pickup, say you're on vacation or something like that, now your trash is sitting for potentially a whole month, which can cause some of those issues too. One thing that I did find when I was doing some of that research was that if you are incentivizing people to go bi-weekly, that you're also incentivizing some sort of way to reduce the trash overall. Like you guys were talking about composting, increasing recycling rates, because you're really trying to keep things out of the landfill, and just pushing that 2-week time frame out a little bit longer is not really doing that if you're not having some other secondary backup plan to collect some of those other waste that you're diverting. So, yeah. You're welcome.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, especially staff, for all this work. And I have a little sign-up sheet here for like scheduling our strategic planning meeting session. I'll have it tomorrow too. I thought, let's just do it super analog and not do a doodle poll, which always drives me up the wall. So feel free to indicate your availability on this. I'll have it today and tomorrow. And yeah.
Is it something that will be after the new people?
Yes, it will be. So what I'll do is I will communicate what